So moving on, let's talk about some overrated teams and some underrated teams here. Um, in the just how they've been doing this season. We're 5 weeks in, and some definitely some overrated teams to me would be Oklahoma State, which and I don't mean overrated in terms of their their rank right now is not warranted because they've certainly put together the body of work to be where they're at.
Right.
But I just don't really see Oklahoma State finishing the season
Being like a top
a
ranked
top
team.
10
Yeah, I don't
team, a top
either.
15 team. I think all praise to them for doing what they're doing.
But they'll eventually
Yeah,
fall a few ranks
and
and
we always talk about the gauntlet of the SEC schedule, but the Big 12 this year with a lot of parity there, they're due to have some losses, some close games, and I just don't see them kind of finishing the year at where they're at. I think there should be some expectation for them to maybe drop a few games and still be one of the better teams in
yeah, I
that
think
Big
they could
12.
still
But
be a good team in the
yeah,
Big 12, but I don't think I don't think they should be regarded to the rank that they're at now. And
yeah,
it's kind of
yeah.
like time will tell. They still have some Big 12 opponents to face. We still have a lot of football to be played. Um and it's right now, it's the beginning of October, so that's kind of like we're transitioning into where football is going to really start being played, and we're going to really start to see who's who and what teams are really what teams. So I think that's a team. I think we could both agree with that, with Oklahoma State and being maybe a little bit overrated.
Yeah, and I'd probably put Penn State in somewhat of the same category, right? I mean, they've come away with wins and they certainly deserve to be a higher ranked team. But looking ahead at the rest of their schedule and um, you know, what the rest of the Big Ten is shaking up to be and just the landscape of college football, I don't see them finishing as a top 10 or top 15 ranked team either.
Right.
I think they showed plenty of promise. Right, they've had some blowout wins, but they've also had some wins that
Some
were
close ones
some
too.
close wins, and it's like you do want that as a team to give you experience to show that you could win in a gritty close game.
Right.
But I just don't see
There's no
offense.
like
Their offense just isn't consistent enough for me.
Yeah, and there's no like true game changer on their offense to where it's like, all right, we like it's just like you said, it's inconsistent. So it's kind of like you don't know if their offense is gonna trend up one week or if they're gonna be like just firing on all pistons. Like you just really don't know. So I think it's a good take. And then like they still have to face a lot of good Big Ten
Right.
opponents.
You still got to
So
go
it's
against
like you
Michigan
struggled
and
against
Ohio State.
Northwestern,
Yeah.
right? And how are you gonna be matched up with Ohio State, with Michigan? And it's like those are powerhouse offenses that you're gonna have to face and that you're gonna have to really bring your A game. So it's like, does Penn State bring their A game? Who knows? We'll see. So
Yeah, and we'll talk about some underrated teams as well. And we could start with Mississippi State. Mississippi State is a team that they just had that big win at Texas A&M, and um you know, they're a team with a high powered offense. They've already dropped a game, which is a little bit disappointing, but I think overall their team is severely underrated. I mean, here's a team that when you want to talk about the SEC, right, and how hard the schedules are, you see a team like Georgia this past week struggle with a team like Missouri,
right.
and people want to say, "Oh, well, it's the SEC and it's hard," and make excuses, but really Georgia needs to handle business against
Georgia,
a team like
yeah,
Missouri.
and it showed that they're beatable. It
Right.
showed that they have that sense of like, okay, they may have come close and they still got the win, but they're beatable. So
Right, but a team like Mississippi State with their offense and having to go against the same type of schedule, they're not going to come out of their schedule with you know, almost no losses. They're going to take their losses, but they're going to compete with the best teams in the SEC on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I think they have a shot to win against everyone, right? And, um, I just think, looking further down in the season, I think they're going to get some pretty nice wins against some teams that people probably have ranked higher than them at this point. And they have, they'll have a shot. Actually, this week they get to go to LSU. LSU, I think they're ranked number 25 now, but they get to go to LSU and try to get a big win on the road over there in a tough place to play.
Yeah, it's always tough to play at LSU, but that'll be a good test. And again, LSU they've also showed some struggle. I mean, they're
Hmm.
under a new coach, and they're still trying to get things together. So I think that'll be a good test for them as well.
Right. And another underrated team I have is Utah. Utah, huge game in week one against Florida. Pretty much all of college football was watching that one. Marquee matchup. They lose in a close one in a tough road environment. And I don't think a lot of people really have been paying attention to Utah since then. I've been high on Utah kind of this whole time, and they've just continued to handle
Improve.
business. Right? They
Yeah.
complete team. They play both sides of the ball well. They're going to put up points. They're going to play a hard nosed defense, and altogether they put these complete games together. I think they're as tough to beat as anyone. I think if you look at the Pac-12, they got to be towards the top of people's lists. I know USC has been doing good. You have Oregon there trying to bounce back. Oregon State also making some noise, but that Oregon State team, they go and they play Utah last week, and Utah hammered them.
Yeah.
It was a close spread, and it wasn't close that game.
So do
So
you think so like what do you think with Florida? I mean, do you think that was maybe a fluke or maybe it was
well,
just
I
like
I don't
lack of
even I don't think
preparation
it was a
or
fluke. I think um, look, we know when teams play a game, that's one game, right? And so you don't know. Nobody knows how they're going to show up
right,
that day. And it could be the coach's
especially week
fault.
1.
It could be just, things don't go their way. But they go into Florida, they play them close, they lost on the
Right.
road in a tough road environment. It happens. These guys, they're all college kids. They're not perfect. They Utah will need to be pretty much perfect the rest of the way if they want to make the playoffs, which they'll have a shot to if they win out, win the Pac-12. I think they'll pretty much cement themselves as a playoff team. But yeah, I think sometimes it happens, right? I mean, we just saw it. Georgia struggled with Missouri. If they would have lost to Missouri, does it mean that all of a sudden they're garbage? No, but it means that probably they should drop in the rankings. You know what I mean? For the time being, and that's
Right.
kind of where they're at. So Utah, they took that loss, they slid in the rankings, but they're handling business, and I think when push comes to shove, when we get towards the end of the year, as opposed to some teams that we mentioned that probably won't be in the top 10 or 15, I think Utah has a
Has a chance
a
of being that and
yeah, pretty good shot of being there, if not even higher, and you know kind of finding their way into that top four if
yeah.
they if everything goes their way. Um, yeah, so